Thank you so much for coming today. I think it's a Friday before like a long weekend, so we are really excited to be here,
Mm-hmm.
speaking and sharing all these slides, beautiful images that we are gonna be showing today. Just like a brief introduction of myself, so I let like Radwin start like with his talk. My name is Agustín Díez Fischer. I'm senior manager in research and archive at the Institute for Studies on Latin American Art here in New York. And we are gonna have this kind of the talk today. Radwin is gonna be presenting. I'm gonna be presenting. Then we are gonna like start a dialogue, and then we are gonna open for questions. Just a quick a big thank
Mm-hmm.
to Poster House for organizing this amazing talk. The exhibition is great, so don't miss it. It's just incredible. Both exhibitions here on this floor and downstairs. So and thank you again for coming, Radwin.
Yeah. So nice to meet you all. My name is Ramdwin González, Puerto Rico. I travel. This is my first time here in New York for this talk. So back in Puerto Rico, I have a design studio that is called Tembol. Um, and I'm here, as Agustin said, to talk about Omar legacy, but also like try to focus on his lettering work, his typographic references, and how he still impacts today work around lettering or letters in Puerto Rico. So precisely, I get to my background is in design. I get to graphic design through graffiti. So when I discovered Omar, it was like I was researching for a proposal and I found the DIVETCO, that is División de Educación a la Comunidad, a social project from the government for the rural communities in Puerto Rico, where when they create posters. And through that, I found the CAP, Centro de Arte Puertorriqueño, later the ICP, Instituto de Cultura Puertorriqueña, and later the works that they do independently in their workshops or silk screen workshops uh, in San Juan. So at first, I have to admit, I wasn't paying enough attention, but as often we said, the devil is in the details, or the design is in the details. So that's when I began to see the poster. I found the reason to study them more carefully, and what drew most my attention was the lettering and calligraphy that he does. When you pay attention to his lettering work, you will find those ligatures, those management of the space, the drawing of the letters, but also the influence of the calligraphic ductus or movement of the shapes of the letters, and that became an obsession for me. How he managed to maximize and create balance, how extensions and ligature were added, as I said, not only for function, but also to strengthen the visual composition, the overall visual composition. And just like I experienced graffiti, legibility was sometimes sacrificed for a stronger visual impact or expressiveness. Here we have Omar. A group of artists back there in Puerto Rico, and that's how I get specifically to Omar was like who was before us, who was creating art, creating graphics before us that were at that moment at the university studying graphic design. So something that inspired me is how he talked about his inspirations. He lived in New York and then moved back to Puerto Rico, and he talked about Ben Chong work, A.M. Cassandre, and Eric Hans, or the WPA posters. And I admire how he reflects on also on the Bauhaus. He, for example, have a quote saying that when he get to the ICP Instituto de Cultura and he see the workshops, he said like this is like feeling like in the Bauhaus or the workshops of the Bauhaus. He also talks about William Morris, the WPA posters, and how he connect that work to Puerto Rico and what was happening in the world in typography illustration was also for me very inspiring, like how he was connected and bring that to Puerto Rico. And another example is that he and Tufino and another group of artists, they project the letters. There's a quote when they said they project the letters at big scale to study them in Puerto Rico. They also have like folios with newspaper cutouts, with magazine cutouts to study the letters. So that's how they receive the like the graphics or the typography that is moving around the world in those printed materials. An example that I bring today is that on that vision of the world, but also how he brings it to Puerto Rico, is that he have a quote that said, Interesatio el cartel, that is a book about el cartel in Puerto Rico. I want to make the emblems with human warmth. The emblems in Mexico and Munich were abstract. He is referring to the his posters of Juegos Panamericanos of 79. And when he said that about the abstract, he's talking about OTO Acher, the Munich Olympics of 72, that in some way established the norm in how the Olympics work around the pictograms and the signage on today Olympic events. Also, he bring or study Lance Wyman, 68 Mexico Olympics, that for me is very interesting because it's more a Latin American context, and he still feels that they are like too abstract, don't communicate. So he studied those movements that establish some way the norm in graphic design, in pictograms, and then he said, they are people they are people who play sports, and it was my wish that people could see themselves in the emblems. In times when we talk about diversity, decolonizing design, and representation, it is essential to highlight his emphasis on recognizing people and his desire for them to be represented. At this time, this meant integrating skin tones, the afro, the movement, the gestures of the hands, and also when we see this series, we see how he brings that study of him, of the other Olympics, to the Juegos Panamericanos of 79. Also how he, for me, began to incorporate like a design system, more robust, more like near to contemporary graphic design. He created a series of variations of the torch, and he blends the Taino reference with the graphic reference and create a system around that to create the series of posters. So as we say in Puerto Rico, que piquete, that you can understand, analyze such important graphic manifestations and events that shapes the norm of contemporary graphic design, and Homar to conclude that he had something different to contribute from his own context, the Caribbean. Other posters that I bring today are more expressive, how he fills the spaces, how he works with monograms, and also how He works with the cutouts, the lettering, and it's very interesting, very expressive by just looking at it. His work also moved from more like that cutouts, that calligraphic styles, to more modern, more lineal, more use of positive and negative space, always suggesting like calligraphic reference, like here, enero 1974, and these kind of posters that used colors and contrast to create expression, but also emphasis, as he talks about the posters and the lettering show work also as image um, on the posters. These are more contemporary reference. Something that I want to bring to you is how his legacy is still creating effect around the work that today different designers are working on. This is a reference from Manuel Olmo. It's the cover of the Revista Instituto de Cultura, the ICP, that we talk about in relation to other posters of Omar. It says Zona Dialectal del Caribe Hispánico, and this is Universe es Design or Universo es Diseño from Luis Antonio Diaz for a Japan magazine. More in the commemorative side, we have Luis Gonzalez with Santurce Slate, number 5, that is an event on art, on murals, back in Puerto Rico in Santurce. This was the 5th edition. And this is Luis Pérez, Fiestas de la Calle San Sebastián in San Juan, and how they reference that also contrast lettering work and also the type, the image, and all this stuff, and how we can connect to the legacy that Omar left us, and what they call La Generación del 50, that is the series of artists that continue his legacy. So something I also want to bring is, he said, without vocation there is no discipline, and without discipline there can be no freedom. So Omar, as Toño Martorell, one of his disciples, said, in a colony, all art is political. Every expression is political. Either affirms or rejects, it protests or lowers its heads. And that's how we find a reference in his art about Pedro Albizu Campo, a nationalist in Puerto Rico, and Ramón Emeterio Betances, and how we found then lettering in the walls of Puerto Rico as a form of protest. So we have that reference of Omar and how we bring that to today work on our streets. Omar demonstrated that lettering and calligraphy can be such more important than text. It could be a visual instrument of protest. This idea has expanded into contemporary Puerto Rico, where letters on walls, posters, and social media serve as call to actions and forms of protest. As Gibbon Siepe states in Design and Crisis, this can be taken as a starting point to act against the crisis, which implies an appeal to each individual, citizen or civilian, since the solutions to the crisis cannot be delegated. So we have this work from the collective La Puerta, Descolonízate. This refers to the Black Puerto Rican flag. I don't know if you have seen it, that it is, no es luto, es resistencia. Maybe you can help me to translate that. No es luto, es resistencia.
Could be, it's not mourning, it's resistance.
Yeah, so in reference to why we developed that flag, that black flag. This is from Luis Antonio Diaz, Recursos de SOS. This was after Hurricane Maria. Aislado, or like that sense of being separated. Um, this is Viva Puerto Rico Libre from Laura Colón. This is an interesting reference that I bring from Oscar Melendez. He is owner of La Serigrafíca, that is like a print shop. I am seeing like a new wave of young colleagues creating print shops, and we are seeing again this kind of lettering of letter work of expressiveness around a new wave or current of graphic artists and posters. This is also from La Puerta, Puerto Rico, ¿cuándo entenderás que nos mienten? O Puerto Rico, when you will see that they lie us. This is a more political statement that is in Valdoriotti de Castro. No red, no blue, ni junta, puñeta. And cojones is a proposal that I recently submit to Voces de las Americas that refers to the Jones Act and what it implies to Puerto Rico, and that make Puerto Rico or obligate Puerto Rico to use the fleet of United States to bring food and all that stuff. And that's my part. And now, Agustin, bring it on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think there are so many things to talk today, and so many things that we can bring into the conversation. So basically, my connection to Omar is happened like many years ago when I got a fellowship at the program in Latin American Studies at Princeton University. And I was there. I went to the library. I was talking to the librarian, and he basically told me, like Omar was really connected to the PLAS, the program in Latin American Studies, because he was really close to Arcadio Diaz Quiñones, who was at the time the director of the program in Latin American Studies. And Omar even also they have a lot of documents, posters related to Omar. Many of them are online, so if you want to go to see them, it's just like incredible. But also Omar designed the logo of the program in Latin American Studies and Princeton University. It's not the logo they are using now. I don't really know why, because it's really good, but they should. But there you can see in the internet, you can see the different logos that Omar designed. So I always been interested in that kind of moments where these artists who are so innovative, so avant-garde in terms of the thing they are proposing, in terms of like language, in terms of materiality, in terms of politics, and when they kind of like start collaborating in with institutions. So I always wonder, like, what are the cultural, like the political context where this kind of collaboration that make this kind of collaboration possible, So the idea for the talk today was not only to talk about Omar, but also to bring other cases that were happening in many cases at the same time while Omar was producing posters in Puerto Rico. So I decided to bring a completely different case, but somehow I think it's going to be important. It's going to be interesting to establish this kind of like parallel of things that were happening at the same time to try to understand different context, and also points in contact, even when Omar was not collaborator, was not part of the project or the institution that um, I'm bringing today. What I'm gonna bring today is, in fact, uh, part of this exhibition. It was a project that we developed many years ago, and it was about this gallery. So it's a context completely. I mean, it's a completely different context. It's basically a commercial gallery. But I'm bringing that because I want to see, okay, what is we see if we analyze posters from a perspective of the institutional perspective in terms of like the context of the production. So, and it's something that also we can explore in Omar's work in relationship with Instituto de Cultura Puertorriqueña, for instance. And I bring in this case in particular because it's a case that is like basically is an exhibition, is an institution that is open from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, where posters were clearly at the center of not only a communication strategy but also a commercial strategy. But also the posters were not like just isolated. The poster were like not only at the center, was a node that connected basically other discourses like cultural, cultural, cultural like discourses, but also political discourses. But also there were at the node, there were posters were connected to other kind of expressions in contemporary art. For instance, we're gonna see how posters were connected to like performance. For instance, posters were connected with music. Posters were like related to other kind of media and expressions. In many cases, really avant-garde proposal or avant-garde artists who are involved in this kind of production of these posters. So posters, as I'm going to show you today in the case that I'm bringing, are not just about like materiality, are not just about the images, are about this kind of like network of possibilities, of network of connection with other discourses and other media and other productions. So just a bit of context of why I'm bringing this case in particular today. Many years ago, I was before being like working at Isla, I was the director of an institution that is called Centro de Estudios Espigas. Espigas is an institution in Argentina, in Buenos Aires. I'm from Buenos Aires. That basically is an archive that preserves, as a research center that preserves a large collection of Latin American documents or documents related to Latin American art. And we also have a large collection related to this particular gallery, that is the Bonino Gallery. So we developed this project that was basically, it was a kind of a project focused on like processing the archives. Also, we had an exhibition here in New York. We had this publication that is online, that is bilingual, so you can download it free, and you can read about the Bonino Gallery. The Bonino Gallery basically is an institution that is started in Buenos Aires, founded by Alfredo Bonino. But in the early 60s, they opened in 1960 like a venue in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. And in 1963, they opened a venue here in New York. So it was a gallery that was basically open at the same time. They have like three different places, one in Buenos Aires, in New York, and the other one in Rio de Janeiro. And it was a gallery that here, for instance, like was the first gallery to show really important artists such as like Charlotte Morman, Nam Shun Paik, many, not only Latin American artists, but artists from all around the world. And they were really well connected in the New York artist scene. So it's something like, and this is happening in the 60s and in the 70s when they moved to Soho. So this is a cover. I'm going to talk a bit more about this. And I'm bringing just one example because I'm not going to be able to show all the kind of like incredible production that the Bonino Gallery supported, developed it. But I'm going to mention some of the cases and some of the artists that were part of this institution. And this is a good example to understand like how this kind of one poster could be connected to different media and to different productions and to different discourses. This is a poster that was developed by the Bonino Gallery when the Bonino Gallery opened like basically the second venue in Buenos Aires, the second building in Buenos Aires in 1969. This is basically a poster that you can wear. It's really beautiful. Like it's something like it's really beautiful to wear these posters. So they will give these posters to the people who are attending this party. So you still today you can see the photos of that party, and they are all wearing these posters. There are like two different versions of this poster. This is the male version of these posters, and this poster was designed by two really important designers from Argentina, Guillermo González Ruiz and Ronald Shakespeare. Just to give you an idea who they, just some kind of context, we're thinking, okay, they were producing context, but these designers were, for instance, related to the Ditela company. The Ditela company was a company in Argentina that basically produced cars, different kind of like fridge, like ovens, like different kind of like objects for the house, and like it was a really important institution or company that also was supportive, financially supporting the Instituto di Tela, that is basically one of the most avant-garde centers in Buenos Aires during the 60s. So this is one, I mentioned Guillermo González Ruiz was the one part working for this particular company. So they were also producing posters for this commercial gallery. And Ronald Shakespeare, they were also involved in basically designing the communication, the visuality of the city of Buenos Aires. So this poster is kind of a place where you can see people working for the government, people or projects working of projects that people working from the government or different companies, like kind of like coming together in this kind of posters. But it's not just about design. This poster also says, I don't know if you can read it, but in the back it says, this is a Bonino, this is an authentic Bonino. That's what basically you will be like wearing if you were in that at that party in 1969. But this is kind of a reference. If you, I don't know if you know a bit more about Latin American art, but this is also a reference, or kind of like loose reference, not direct reference, to what Alberto Greco, that was a really important artist, first informal artist, then performance artist, was developing at that time in the 60s. I'm just like, this is the early 60s. Alberto Greco was developing, for instance, this idea of a performance artist with the artist was at the center of develop this kind of campaign of putting the name of the artist itself at kind of the center of these kind of performances. So there are two examples. This is Greco using the posters to say like, Alberto Greco, qué grande sos, how great you are. So he basically like put all these posters in the city of Buenos Aires and like about himself, about Alberto Greco. Now this idea of obviously the performance, and this also like he will like sign people. This was in Spain. He will sign people and say, okay, this is an authentic Greco, or this is a real Greco. So
Feels like graffiti too.
yeah, definitely, 100%. Yeah, totally. So this is the kind of poster that is a single poster that at the same time is like kind of like a place where it's happening a connection between people working with for companies, people working for the government, but also people like what is was happening in this kind of like the most avant-garde movement of Latin American art that was happening in the 60s. So I'm gonna just go through some of the examples of the kind of how this gallery was developing this kind of like, as I mentioned, communication strategy, but also commercial strategy, and why they put the poster at the center of that strategy. So I'm gonna bring examples from the 60s, from the 50s, from the 70s. And just to give you an idea, just like the gallery is not really representing or supporting a particular language. He's like, they're basically like showing like so many different kind of like productions, works. And just to give you an example of something that is happening between 1961 and 1962, there are three completely different artists that are being represented by the Bonino Gallery, and the poster they are developing, they have some connections, but also they are like basically showing completely different languages. So we have, for instance, Kazuya Sakai, who's an Argentinian artist who also like from a Japanese family. And so you have a lot of his work has a lot of references with like Japanese typography and Japanese culture. Then we have Janira, that is a Brazilian artist who recently the Museum of Modern Art in Sao Paulo, they basically developed an incredible like retrospective exhibition about her work, and where she's basically referring to a lot of like different like festivities in Brazil. So it's a complete, as you can see, it's a completely different language, and some kind of abstract expressionism from the US, like Al Health. So you can see like three different posters that were basically made at the same time. So what is happening when a gallery is producing all these posters? But it's not a question of like an homogeneous language, but a question of another kind of larger strategy. And just to give you two examples of how like poster walls are the central of what Silvia Dolinco, in many cases I'm following her, she's an incredible art historian from Argentina, who analyzed the Bonino Gallery in the context of the star system. The Bonino Gallery understood that as a way to be have a successful program or successful project, also they could take advantage of the star system in Argentina first, and then in the US. And this is one of the a good example of like Sean Woodward and Paul Newman visiting the exhibition Magnet New York at the Bonino Gallery. And in particular, Paul Newman used to buy a lot of work from the Bonino Gallery, but also like I don't know, I haven't seen a poster about him. Another like really important actor that was connected to the Bonino Gallery was Marcello Mastroianni, because Umberto Mastroianni, his uncle, was an artist of the Bonino Gallery. So every time someone like Marcello Mastroianni will visit, if Marcello was not there. When Marcello Mastroianni was visiting the exhibition, they will like kind of like make like that as a part of a commercial strategy, a communication strategy. And I'm bringing what you can barely see that is on my left. This is a poster of the 50th exhibition of the Bonino Gallery in Buenos Aires in 1954. So that's basically a poster. It's a unique edition because the poster was basically signed by all the people who are visiting the gallery. So the poster is also a strategy to reinforce this idea of how the gallery is connected with this kind of cultural sphere, but also like kind of like, as Silvia Lego will call it, the star system. So there are like many really well known from the Argentinian context, like signature here, including the writer Jorge Luis Borges and Nora Borges, his sister. So just to give you an idea how since the very beginning they were putting the poster in the center of this strategy, and how this strategy was going like way beyond the idea of the poster itself. And this is also another really interesting example that is an important artist, really important artist who really changed the way of it really changed the way like books, posters were being printed in Argentina. Really was playing a really important role on the, for instance, the new role that silkscreen will like take in the 60s. It's basically Luis Ioane. Luis Ioane is an artist who was born in Buenos Aires. Then he left Argentina and went to Galicia. Galicia is I always like Galicia, no? Yeah, Galicia in Spain. And he was part of this movement until was in Galicia producing like different kind of documents. He was a designer, but also he produced murals, ceramics, like different kind of productions. And he was really involved in supporting the independence of Galicia, and really involved in the cultural in Galicia, and then in Buenos Aires with all the people who were exiled after the Civil War. So he went back to Argentina after the Civil War, and he started producing, was a really important artist for the Bonino Gallery, not only as an artist showing like his work, but also producing many of the images that the Bonino Gallery was using. And just to give you an idea how he was like doing so many, he was not, poster was just one aspect of this kind of like production of images, where also you can see how the connection between more like kind of like modern languages, you know, in the way he's represented the human figure with contemporary ways to produce that. And this is a really good example of how print different kind of prints were involved in this commercial strategy. This is basically a book that the Bonino Gallery published 2 books that were basically reproducing all the covers of the books that Sioane produced in different kind of like publishing houses. So this is the second book covers from 1957. And he was here. This is a xylography, and there were other techniques in the book. A woodcut, and also how he was really involved in this political context. And this is important to understand how he was. They were all working. The Sioane was working for the Bonino. For Bonino, there was also working for a really important a publication house that was called Imprenta Lopez, with another Italian artist. His name was Attilio Rossi. But he was also really involved in the campaign, in this case, supporting the independence of Galicia. And during his whole life, then back in Argentina, he was supporting the anti-fascist movement. So in many cases, there is a really porous or really kind of like a places where you can see these posters circulating or these images circulating in commercial galleries, but you can see a close relationship with things that are happening, for instance, political posters. That is something really important to talk to about, like Homar. And this is another case, that's something that happened. This is not related to the Bonino gallery, but just to tell you how all this production of images were so, in a way, intertwined, in a way they were like producing some kind of languages or developing some kind of languages, or the importance of this kind of like images and how they were circulating. And this is just a really important case. They say in 1969, so the same year, like basically the poster that we saw at the beginning was happening. There is a really important, some of them might remember that Nelson Rockefeller, basically he did like a huge kind of like trip around Latin America. When he was going to Argentina, a group of artists decided to develop a project, a really large group of artists, that was called Unwelcome Rockefeller. So it was a couple of years before, we will have like an exhibition that was against the Vietnam War. So this was basically an exhibition whose title was Unwelcome Rockefeller, and it was a poster exhibition happening exactly at the same time. In fact, like 2 blocks away from the party that the Bonino Gallery was having, and with the poster that we saw at the beginning. And that posters, unfortunately, we don't have any. There is only one artist took black and white photos. And these are the few photos that we have are basically this article that was published in Rampart, a leftish magazine here in the US. And there were all these posters from different artists from Latin America, in particular from Argentina, like basically producing posters against the visit of Nelson Rockefeller. So this is all happening in a really, really small place. And we can see like how many different like languages, how many different like political goals, how many different goals, political, commercial, and or related to the communication strategy or institutional communication. This is just another example that I'm bringing here that was also producing for the Bonino Gallery, and in a way is also related to the production of posters. Posters is kind of a print that kind of expanded to different media or different strategies or different kind of objects. And this is one case that I wanted to bring to you. Luis Felipe Noé is a really important artist from Argentina who passed away last year, who basically also came here to New York in the 60s. He was part of all this group of artists who were producing here in the city, in particular in something that was called the International Artist Seminar. And he was basically hired by the Monino Gallery to produce this kind of like greeting cards, you know. And every year, the Bonino Gallery we produce a greeting card. As you can see, there is a connection between what the poster being produced and this greeting card. And just like this was 1965, and also like the group of artists who's producing this postcard is the New York Graphic Workshop. The New York Graphic Workshop was basically a kind of workshop of three artists um, from Latin America. They were here in New York, and they were hired to by the Bonino to basically to print this postcard that was produced by Noé. The New Geographic Workshop, just to give you an idea, participated of the really well-known exhibition Information, basically proposing a work that, just to like explaining briefly, like the idea was that you will fill a form and you will get like a postcard that was shipped by the Museum of Modern Art. Information was this exhibition organized by MoMA. So the idea that they had is like, basically this was in 1970. They wanted MoMA to basically go into bankruptcy, because they thought like, if every single people who's visiting the exhibition is basically asking for this postcard, MoMA is not gonna have money to survive. So they are gonna have to close. So they had this kind of anti-institutional approach, the New Geographic Workshop, and at the same time they were participating in this kind of like project with the gallery. So this kind of idea of moments where like institutions or production of images are kind of like, or production of prints are kind of like intertwined or connecting. And this is just, I'm gonna finish with this just to also see how the just to give you an idea, because I started with these posters that people were wearing in the opening of the venue in 1969. At the same time, there was that night, there was like kind of audiovisual event. There was a band playing like a kind of contemporary like band playing things, and then they were projecting this kind of image that is also based in this kind of like idea of the importance of the production of a particular image, and where the poster were kind of at the center, as I mentioned. And this is basically a long audiovisual that we reconstructed with the help of Silvia Dolinco a couple of years ago. We basically were going through the archive, and we found all these slides, and we discovered that the slides were numbered. So we thought like, okay, if they are numbered, there should be something that they were like projecting this. And so we basically reconstruct this audiovisual, and the idea of this audiovisual is basically that connects the Bonino Gallery from the Alfredo Bonino was Italian, so basically from Greece, from the ancient Greece to basically to Paul Newman. So from the ancient Greece to Hollywood. This is absolutely crazy. It doesn't make any sense, but that's the idea, to show you how the gallery understood the production of this image of a larger context of understanding this institution and positioning this institution in a cultural, in the commercial, and also in a political context. So this is just, I wanted to bring you. It's a really fun. It's really fun to see how the images are like kind of like going, and how he's kind of the one over there is Bonino, and how he's being connected with like artists, with a star from Hollywood that he met, and different kind of people with like you can see things from Greece, from Rome, etc. So okay, that's basically what I wanted to show you and share with you, related to something else that was happening in Latin America while Omar was producing all the things that were that you can see downstairs. So thank you so much. So we have time for questions. So should I start? I would like to start with like I think I really love how you were showing kind of like the like the contemporary like influences or the contemporary presence of Omar. You know, like how many artists are like thinking or kind of like producing things that we can um, where we can see like things that where we can basically understand the connection that there are with Omar's work. But I want you as you as someone who's producing like works, what would you say is like the main aspect of Omar's influence? It's like, will you say is color? Will you say is the letters? Will you say because the thing that you show like more contemporary thing are also really different. So I
Mhm.
wonder like where do you see Omar's presence? What's the way this kind of channel of communication, and also on a practical level, like this is out of curiosity. I wanted to know, like, people in Puerto Rico, where do they see Omar? Where is Omar's presence?
Okay, so in the point of view that I bring is through letters, how letters bring that treatment more as a communicative device, but also as an piece of art, as an image. So, for example, here we have the Santurce sleigh example that can you if with effort you can read Santurce sleigh, but it's also an image that you can have in your wall. And then you have the Luis Perez reference with San Sebastian more clearly legible. And those reference, Omar has like that statement that we recognize impacts the generación del 50. So there are like a series of artists that begin to generate posters with those characteristics of expressive lettering. Um, and how I bring that to the new generations or how they bring. For example, Luis was saying to me, "Oh, I am so happy that you are going to show my poster. I love and I always reference Omar as my inspiration to my work." And that's how I built that bridge. Also, where we find Omar now with the internet, we can see the collection. But if you want to see the prints, there are some small collection. For example, in Universidad Ana Geméndez, that is like a private institution that have a collection. You have to like go to the museum, and they have some of his posters. Um, there is no like place where you can go and study Omar, but it's a thing of like, exploring the internet, making the connection, and go to the places that maybe you can find some of those posters. Um, so yeah, it's like some um, private institution, Instituto de Cultura, also have his posters, but of my knowledge right now, they don't have them exhibited in a specific place, like for continuous study of them.
There is something that is really important also, like how like to understand these cases is really interesting to see them in the context of the history of the materiality and the
Yeah.
history of the production and the history of the knowledge. I was remembering another series of posters when the Battle of Argel, like
Hmm.
the movie obviously had a really important political impact. And I remember there is a really famous posters. I don't exactly remember who designed that poster.
Martorell.
Martorell. I
Yeah.
thought it was Martorell.
Yeah.
And you can see that posters that basically is a face. Correct me if
Mhm.
I'm wrong. Is a
Yes.
face of a woman, and the face is basically is in black, and the background is could be. I remember I saw one, it was in pink, but then after I saw the same poster with another background, because if you are doing silk screen
Mhm.
and you are using two posters, because that's a silk screen, if you are using two colors, uh, it's gonna be you're gonna use the color that you have, so you will see that posters in that different,
Yeah.
like in different colors, because the idea was to have like as to produce basically as many posters as you could. So the best way to do is to
Mhm.
use that materiality the best you could do. So he would like do that poster in another color, because important, the thing that the point was that just printing that poster.
Yeah, that remembers me at Omar when he passed to make the direction of Instituto Cultura and the series of works that they do there in the Instituto or ICP. He talks about how he explored the medium, in this case the silkscreen, and how he like pushed the frontiers of the medium, how to manage, and also he do an exhibition that you can find the poster here um, in Galeria Colibri, where he just explored the medium and just how I can work with colors, how I can shape the letters. And that's when we are talking about institutions, for example, how being working with the without in the walls of the Instituto Cultura also allows him to explore those frontiers of the medium, and how that changed with time. Now design is always like very near to technology and how medium change with time. That's also how I bring why I bring the new wave of young people creating silk screen, because that also, when you see the Omar work, it's like more like he brings the paper and cut the letters. So that's something that for you to make that in a computer is very weird, or not in the same fluent way that he does with his posters.
And also something that connects the two presentations is this idea of many artists, like where Omar and many of these artists were traveling. So there is an idea of like artists in the case I presented, like from the European diaspora, Italian, Spanish, that were like traveling to Argentina in that case, and really changing the way things were produced. Were producing books, they were producing posters, bringing a new knowledge or bringing new experimentation. And I think that's also is present in Omar, and what happened in the Puerto Rican diaspora too, in terms of these kind of connections, and how this is kind of changing the this kind of like technological dialogues,
Mhm.
also like or explorations. Yeah. Questions, things you would like to. This is also like a really famous one, El
Mm-hmm.
Grito de Lares.
Grito de Lares, yeah.
What about like what about the idea of, and I would like to, this is just a general question, but and it's not just related to Omar, but also like obviously like the when you choose a particular language, it's a political statement,
Yeah.
like in Puerto Rico in particular,
Yeah. Yeah, something that when you say about the traveling, he talks about we have in Puerto Rico La Casa del Libro that was founded by Elmer Adler. So he brings incunables, like rare books. He brings, they have the Gutenberg Bible specimens. They have like Eric Gill, that is a famous typographer. They have their drawings, his drawings in the Casa del Libro, and that's also how he was exposed to that movements around the world. Also, with the Instituto, he travels to Germany and get to know Hermann Zapp, that another famous typographer, and that's also for me very interesting how he was like traveling, exposing himself to those movement and manifestation, but also how he brings that to Puerto Rico and create his own manifestation and his own expression of how he wants to convey that message or that lettering or treatment in the poster.
Yeah, it's also really interesting talking about like again about this traveling, like like we have like in many cases, for instance, like in the case of the Bonino Gallery, the design of the logo of the Bonino Gallery was by this artist, as his name was Thomas Gonda, that is basically a designer who then went to the school of Ulm School of Design, and basically participated in like many different designs. One of the most famous was the Lufthansa airline logo and communication, and like considered one of the most important of the
Mm-hmm.
20th century. Many, in fact, like concrete artists. I'm thinking of Tomas Maldonado, for
Mm-hmm.
instance. Is a really another important artist from Argentina. He was the director of the school in Ulm. That is like also considered a really important school for design. So we are like seeing this kind of like crossing from one side to another, and
Mm-hmm.
this kind of collaborations of how these things are being developed and developed in different places.
Yeah, I have to bring the Ulm school, because that's Otto Acher from the Olympics of Germany, Munich, of the '72. He was also on the Ulm school. So yeah, that bridge of how was we are the world is like reshaping the norms of graphic design, these new manifestations, and how people from Argentina are reacting to it, or working around it, or influence in some ways.
It's really interesting the thing also that yeah, exactly this quote, that he wanted to like compare to the design in Mexico. That is also a really well-known
Hmm.
design project, and what he wanted to just kind of like bring humanity, bring like bodies and bring the diversity of the bodies
Hmm.
as part of this image for the Juegos Panamericanos.
Yeah, and when we are talking about design systems, how he brings like and begin to put the logo around with the title, and how in this series of posters he are more focused on the expressions of the simple illustrations, and the lettering that we used to see, and the expressiveness on the letter are like move away. That's for me also how he understand the segment
Yeah.
of this project.
So, for instance, in this case, like the letters are not playing, are not like the primary like
Yeah,
actor in the play.
yeah.
Like they're more the image, and then like, and also it's funny how he was signing, no, like the some of the posters. There is another one that you show at the beginning with the signature is
Yeah.
here, like it's up
Hmm.
there, kind of like hidden in the middle of the poster,
Yeah.
understanding obviously the importance of the letter, and the signature is
Hmm.
part of the letter, so he understood where to put them.
Yes. Here we have the signature too.
Yeah, and it's down in the other one. No, it's the green one
Yeah.
down there. Yeah.
So yes. Any question?
Hi, thank you so much for this talk. It's been so generative. Can you talk a bit more about like icons and iconography, especially in like a more like pan Latin American, like, or do you see like icons, like yeah, like images or iconography, like across posters or art? I'm like wondering because I'm thinking to like the exhibit's main poster of the skeleton or the calavera, which is like influenced with the Mexican culture, Day of the Dead, and so kind of seeing how that like cross cultural. Can you speak any more? Do you see that like either with Omar, like across? That makes sense.
Yeah, I will definitely need to think more about that to answer you properly, but kind of like just to think like a quick answer. I would say like um certain way to represent the human figure, and certain way to represent the human figure, like related, for instance, with like festivities. We were like, and with like Sioane is a really important case, and I think also connect with Omar is saying. I wouldn't say that it's a particular iconography that is connected, but how we represent certain types in society that are like, for Sioane, it's really important to represent people who are not the one who's represented in a portrait, for instance. He are not represented in our history with capital letter. He will represent other kind of figures that were, and in fact, in many cases, were figures that were related to the resistance against the Franco dictatorship. So he kind of repeats, reproducing, he kind of like these like popular figures that he will represent. And I think that's also something that is presented in Omar. And I think it's something interesting to see that, because that crosses in many cases for artists who were having like really specific political positions, how the importance of these kind of representations were the importance of these kind of representations in posters, in like paintings. So I would say that's something will be like a point of connection to establish a comparative perspective to understand like things that were happening in other places.
I will stick to that. Yeah. So maybe something that I can add to you, if you want to explore, for example, the pictograms and how they expand, you can explore isotype. That is like where these symbols and pictograms came from, mainly from a Russian infographic perspective, and how they create data graphics, how they also create different pictograms to represent different data. So that's for me area for I suggest to refer to.
Can I ask you, like, I think it might be maybe in a final question. Well, if not, we can open to another question. Shakil was going to say something. One more question. And Shakil doesn't have a question. Okay, so last one. Okay, no, like I wanted to ask you, like, who's you mentioned, I think, that there's a new wave of people using like seal screen, or like, is that correct? Do you understand?
How I say, workshops, and people doing soul screen. That's something, for example, when I was on university, uh, I came on a wave of everything was like computer digital printing. So right now there are like, I have 35, so 20 something, they are creating his own shops to create posters on the medium of silk screen. So yeah, that's something that we are finding right now in Puerto Rico.
Well, with this idea of coming back to like printing and this kind of like the use of like this kind of images and this kind of like traditions or like relations, I think we can close this conversation. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much, Poster Hub. Thank you so much, Shakil, for all you organizing this. And yeah, thank you for coming. Thank you.
Woo.